Man, it is a beautiful summer day here in Spokane, Washington.
And, nothing goes better with summer than an English mild, right?
Yeah, because those England, they know how to party, right?
Especially in the summertime.
Yeah, so to crack open this bikini season, we figured we'd talk to you about what goes into a mild and share our recipe with you.
Pretty much. We brewed this English mild a few weeks back now, and it's on tap. It's delicious, and we think that it's a great style to share and kind of go over the BJCP breakdown with you guys.
That's right. It is a really good style, actually, for this time of year, because it lends itself well to being a late winter beer, and will still kind of taste really good going into spring, too. So I think it's that perfect crossover of not quite being a full-on winter beer, but being good in the winter and good in the early spring as well.
Perfect. So let's just go into it. According to BJCP, the aroma on this beer should have some fruitiness, right? But nothing to do with hops, everything to do with the yeast.
Yeah, and that's pretty indicative of English-style yeast. We mentioned that a little bit when we went over all the fermentist-style yeasts with the SO4. So if you want to check that video, we'll put a little card or something above us. But yeah, it is a slightly fruity beer, but overall, the major component of this beer is it's flavorful but light.
Which, if we go down into the overall mouthfeel, it's going to have a light to medium body, but generally a lower carbonation with some roastiness, might be sweeter, but a rather full mouthfeel for the gravity.
And you can probably tell by the color that this beer is a brownish, but this has a very wide color range, actually. Yep. They're very typically on that darker brown side, but they can go up to 12 SRM. Which is kind of like a golden orangey yellow. Yep.
So a lot of adjuncts go into this beer, especially because its starting gravity is going to generally be between 1030 and 1038. I think we hit right on the very top end of this, just because if you make a 3% beer in a commercial world, it doesn't really sell. But anyway, yeah, so you get a body by using a higher amount of adjuncts. Speaking of adjuncts, Peter, what kind of goes into this grain-wise?
In general, to get a lot of this color, you're going to use a dominant amount of caramel malts. Those will actually play really well with the fruitiness that you get off your yeast and lend some residual sweetness or the perception of sweetness, even though this is a relatively dry finishing beer.
Yeah. On top of caramel malts, I believe in our recipe, which we'll definitely link down below, we have a little bit of some roasted malts in there too, don't we? I think, pale chocolate?
Yeah, pale chocolate's what we use. Oftentimes they are kissed with some level of pale chocolate, even roasted barley, because you can have a little bit of that kind of roast coffee-like flavor in this style of beer.
Just in a very small amount, though. We have to remember that because this is a low alcohol beer, you must be restrained. This will be like 1 to maybe 2%.
Yeah, you don't want to overpower that roast flavor just because it is such a light-bodied beer. That roast can start to get astringent really fast and feel like you're chewing on coffee grounds. Little interesting thing about the history of this beer, this is a beer that used to thought to have some heritage relating to the porter, and that's what was in my mind in terms of the history of this beer, but it turns out as of the 2015 style guidelines, they redacted that possible connection and said, as far as we know, it's not in any way related to the porter. What it is related to is just trying to be a beer back in the day that was made to be fresh, basically something that tastes good early on and didn't have the staying power of something that was bolder and hoppier like your porters or IPAs.
I think ultimately the history really refers to the ability for, one, this beer to be very sessionable, and two, for you to be able to do a quick turnaround on it, or at least for the brewers to be able to do a quick turnaround. Low alcohol beer isn't going to take as long to mature, so you can crank it out. People can drink it fast and drink lots of it, and that's where the mild fits in.
So it's a perfect beer if you want a lot of flavor and you want to do something sessionable, but you don't want to go with another pale or IPA or wheat beer like you see everywhere else. It's got a lot of those dark fruit flavors that you love of your more big and bold beers, which I think is what makes it that perfect crossover between a late winter, early spring kind of drinker.
Yeah, I would say for our beer and specifically along the lines of flavors, the BJCP mentioned some. I think the ones that really stuck out to me are going to be the nutty flavors in there. I think ours is exceptionally nutty. Yeah. Also, plum and raisin. I do definitely get some kind of a raisiny note.
Those are two of the hugest ones in my mind. Yeah, the fruitiness and coming in terms of like that plum and raisin are pretty big. And then do get a little bit that kind of molassesy, and that's just because of the crossover between the fruitiness, that plum raisin, and the sweetness from the crystal malt. Those kind of combined to give you that pseudo molasses kind of character.
Yep. This also mentions some coffee or coffee, toffee, and roasted qualities that can be in these. As for ours, I don't think it really pushes those notes through nearly as much as some of the other ones.
Yeah, so that's pretty much it on the mild. Please check out our recipe that we'll link below and let us know what you think. If you end up brewing it, share your brew experience on Facebook or Instagram and tag us in it. That way we can be like, hey, good job. How'd it taste for you? That's super cool. And then we'll mentally high five, which will be really awesome.
Yeah.
Also, if you like this kind of style thing where we go and do some style breakdowns, learning more about specific styles, but maybe even tasting commercial examples of these styles, let us know, because we're considering doing some sort of a weekly live stream and or podcast where we just talk about beer styles, taste a bunch of beers, and let you guys know what we think.
Whew. Until next time, make fun of Peter because he's naked underneath his blanket.
Very naked.
Yeah, we'll see you on Genus Brewing.
I've never bent so free.
Bent?
Been...
Viva la beer. Oh, like and subscribe.